patron, Principal Madam, our esteemed speaker, delegates, and dear students. I, Chandrima Bandhopadhyay, Faculty of Department of Geography, welcome all to today's special lecture on sea level and associated changes in Indian Sundarbans under climate change scenario issues in perspective. Now I'd like to request our Chief Patron, Dr. Urmila Ukil, Principal of Sarojini Naidu College for Women, to deliver the welcome address.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Yes,
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of
Mute your audios, please. Please do not interrupt.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes.
On behalf of everyone of Sarojini Naidu College for Women, I welcome you all to this present day's lecture, Sea Level and Associated Changes in Indian Sundarbans under Climate Change Scenario Issues in Perspective, organized by the Department of Geography of our college. I thank all the faculty members of the Department of Geography for organizing this special lecture. I express my deep gratitude of today's speaker, Honorable Dr. Rajashree Dasgupta, for giving her consent to give the lecture today. I thank all the participants of today's webinar. Climate change is supposed to be the biggest threat we are facing today. It knows no border and presents an existential challenge to all of us. An important effect of climate change is change in sea level. Due to global warming, we all know ice caps of polar regions are melting very fast, which eventually give rise in sea level. Not only that, due to climate change, frequency of extreme weather events like cyclone, flood, or etc. has increased also. One of those deadly cyclones was Amphan, which we all faced very recently. Sundarban, being a very important mesh of mangrove forest, posed as barrier during that deadly cyclone. And of course, it became worst affected region after cyclone. These adverse effects of climate change also hamper development process in the short and long run. To carry out sustainable development in coastal regions like Sundarban, we have to know the threats first. That is why it is very important that we meet here today to discuss on this crucial topic. I am confident that this lecture will be a very introspective and engrossing for all of us. I thank all the participants of today's webinar being present here today, and I again express my gratitude to our honorable speaker for giving this very, very special lecture. I strongly believe that today's lecture will be a very successful one. I thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I'd like to request Professor Madhushree Pali Datta to introduce today's esteemed speaker. Ma'am, please. Ma'am, please unmute yourself, ma'am.
Yes. Sorry. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Chandrima. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to introduce our honorable speaker, Dr. Rajashree Dasgupta, in the occasion of this special lecture arranged by the Department of Geography, Sarojini Naidu College. Dr. Rajashree Dasgupta received her master's degree from the University of Calcutta in the year 2000 and has completed her pre-doctoral research from School of Oceanographic Studies, Jadavpur University, She was awarded a PhD degree by the same university for her thesis titled Assessment of Vulnerability and Adaptation Strategies for the Sundarban Island System, uh, West Bengal, India. In the perspective of climate change, she joined Krishnanagar Government College in the same year. She has also done a certificate course in remote sensing and GIS mapping from Jadavpur University and is engaged in pertaining training of the same course to the postgraduate students in the University of Kalyani. Rajashree's teaching interests include courses on biogeography, population and settlement geography, environmental geography, regional planning, urban geography, and also in the contemporary issues related to geography. She has several pre-doctoral and postdoctoral project works. Presently, she is the principal investigator for a UGC-funded minor research project entitled Status of Population Pressure and its Impact on Food Security in the Perspective of Climate Change, case studies in the coastal blocks of Sagar and Namkhana in Indian Sundarban. She has successfully given master's level dissertation guidance in a wide range of topics, starting from climatic issues to women development. She has also several publications where she mainly works with climate change and resultant issues in the coastal areas of Indian Sundarbans. Now coming to today's lecture topic, we all know that the rate of sea level rise is accelerating and posing great threats in the coastal areas. Today, Dr. Rajashree Dasgupta will enlighten us about it with her informative lecture on sea level and associated changes in Indian Sundarbans under climate change scenario, issues in perspective. We would like to extend a special welcome to our guests of honor and request to deliver our lecture. Thank you. Over to Chandrima.
Chandrima, unmute yourself. Chandrima.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. I request all the participants do not interrupt during the lecture. You can write your questions down in the chat box. There will be a separate discussion session at the end. And now I would like to request our esteemed speaker, Dr. Rajashree Dasgupta, to start his lecture, to start her lecture, sorry.
Am I visible to all?
Yes, ma'am.
Am
You
I
are visible.
Yes.
Namaskar and a very good evening to the respected Principal Madam of Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Dr. Urmila Ukil, the Head Department of Geography, Dr. Shatarupa Denyogi, the other revered teachers of the department, my revered colleagues from other colleges, and dear students and distinguished guests. Today, I am very much delighted to join you all in this virtual platform, and I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Shatarupa Denyogi for giving me an invitation to share some of my thoughts regarding this very topic on sea level and associated changes in the Indian Sundarbans under climate change scenario. And this is a major concern for almost all academicians now and the government officials, as well as we, the common people who are residing very near to the Sundarban area. So I would like to share my PPT with you today. So I'm sharing, please do confirm me that whether you can all see the PPT or not. I'm just sharing it. Is it visible?
Not yet, Didi,
Yes,
not
ma'am.
yet. Yeah, now it is visible.
Okay, okay. See, I have tried to categorize my discussion of today's topic on these very issues, like natural or physical vulnerability which the island system is facing at present, the biophysical changes that the region is facing under climate change situation, the status of the social vulnerability, what are the different anticipated future changes, and what feasible management strategies we can design to minimize the effect or the negative impact of climate change on this island system. Now, before I go to the study area of Indian Sundarbans, I'd like to give a very small introduction what the climate scientists are trying to put forward before us. In fact, the scientists working on climate change issues are of the opinion that almost all the climatic regions of the world, starting from polar to temperate to tropical and arid, they are all getting negatively affected by the impacts of climate change. However, the problem is much more severe in case of tropical coastal stretches because of huge population density. Here, the people are getting increasingly exposed to the problems of open vulnerability, that is, vulnerability caused by such natural changes like relative sea level rise, coastal erosion, coastal submergence and flooding, frequent embankment failure, cyclones and storm surges, etc. Now, in addition to this, the regions are also facing enormous population pressure, and here the population density are also huge. So along with the physical vulnerability, the social vulnerability is also very high in these coastal stretches of tropical waters. So feasible adaptation strategies are the need of the hour to restore some of the damages which these fragile ecosystems in the coastal belts are facing. Now, I'd also like to highlight some major observations that were put forwarded by IPCC in the fifth assessment report of 2014. That is, the global mean sea level is rising and is accelerated, and it is further to rise in future. Moreover, this is mainly contributed by the glaciers melting and the ice sheets melting.
Didi,
From
Didi,
2006, yes,
yeah,
yes,
sorry to interrupt you. One thing
no,
I
it's
would
okay.
like to say that the slides are not moving. I mean, we are seeing the first slide only.
Okay, okay.
And this is
Is
one
it?
thing, and another thing is that if you can please make it a slide show or slide,
Yeah, I have made it. I have made it. Thanks for informing me. But is it not coming? I am
no, it's
just
not
giving.
coming. We are only seeing the first slide of your PPT. The slides are not
Okay, okay.
moving. Yeah.
So is it coming now?
No,
I'm not
no.
going to the
Yeah.
slideshow.
Oh, okay. It is coming now.
So
Okay.
better, I'm not going to the slideshow, but I'm just scrolling
Okay,
the
fine.
slides.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Now, as I was discussing, that the major observations that has been put forwarded by IPCC in their fifth assessment report of 2014 is that the global mean sea level is rising, and it is rising and is also further, it may accelerate in the future. It is mainly contributed because of the melting of the glaciers and the ice sheets. And from 2006 to 2015, it is anticipated that the global mean sea level rise was at the rate of 3.6 millimeter per year. And the dominant cause behind this global mean sea level rise was because of anthropogenic forces. In fact, the non-climatic anthropogenic drivers, including the recent and historical demographic and settlement trends, as well as anthropogenic subsidence, is going on over these low-lying coastal stretches and is increasing the coastal communities' exposure to different extreme sea level events. The coastal ecosystems are also getting impacted by the combination of sea level rise, the climate-related ocean changes, as well as adverse effects from human activities on both ocean and land.
Didi, again,
Yes?
sorry for the interruption. Actually,
Yeah, yeah.
our participants can't see the slides. They are requesting for a full screen or a slideshow, if that can be
Yeah,
done.
I am going for the slideshow, but maybe somewhat you are not being able to see. Is it coming? I am going for that option, but is it
No,
not coming?
no. Actually, it's
Please ask them to pin me.
pin.
Please
Yeah, okay,
ask
fine.
please ask them to pin me, and
Yeah,
then they can see.
okay,
I think that it will be visible.
okay.
So should I continue or should I wait for some time?
No, ma'am. You please continue. I will be writing it in the chat box. Please
Okay, no.
continue. Okay.
Okay. Now the coastal risk is also dynamic and is increased by widely observed changes in coastal infrastructure, community livelihoods, agriculture, and habitability. Now, one thing are these slides visible? I have given this
Yes,
slideshow.
slides are visible, but in a very, I mean, small mode. The slideshow is not visible. The
Slideshow.
slideshow
I have
option is,
given the slideshow option,
yeah.
but why it is not coming? I am just wondering.
Didi, on the upper tab, you see there is a slideshow option after this home design. Can you just click that one?
Yeah. I have given that
You have.
slideshow option only, but why that is not visible to the audience? I really don't know. I have given this. So
No, here it is not coming as slideshow. It's not coming full screen.
so is it coming like this only?
Yeah, it is
Yes.
coming like this only. My original part is only coming. It's not coming as
I
a
think
slideshow.
some technical glitches are there. Some
Maybe.
technical glitches
Okay.
are there.
No
So
problem.
should I
I'll tell
continue
them.
like this?
Yeah. You continue. I'll tell them to pin you. No problem.
Okay. So coastal risk is dynamic and is increased by widely observed changes in coastal infrastructure, as well as community livelihoods are getting interrupted. The agriculture and the habitability are getting affected. Moreover, the rate of sea level rise is also anticipated to increase further to 15 millimeter per year in the year 2100, and it may exceed several centimeters in the 22nd century. Now, this particular part, this is showing the sea level trends, which was collected from the satellite altimetry data, and it is showing that how the different regions are facing the sea level trends. The unit is given in millimeter per year, and this has been taken from the source which I have mentioned below. India is such a country which is facing the sea level trend rise at the rate of 0.5 to 3 millimeter per year. In some parts of India, they are also facing the problem of relative sea level rise at the rate of 3 to 5.5 millimeter per year. This is really pushing the vulnerability level of the coastal poor people to a very higher side. Now, regarding the sea level change in the last 10 years, which has also been collected from the satellite data, that is from altimetry, it is also showing a very steep rise. And it is showing that the global mean sea level was rising at the rate of 2.8 plus minus 0.5 millimeter per year. The expected impacts of sea level rise on coastal ecosystems over the course of the century include not only the contraction of the habitats, but also the loss of their functionality, their biodiversity, as well as the inland migration of the people. It is also going to increase in cases where the land reclamation activities are very pronounced and where the anthropogenic barriers are preventing the inland migration of marshes and mangroves and are limiting the availability and relocation of sediments. The risks related to this relative sea level rise, which includes the erosion, flooding, as well as salinization of the estuarine water and land, these are all expected to significantly rise by the end of the century. And without the presence of major additional adaptation efforts, the coastal people will be exposed to the open vulnerability problems in large manner. Now, coming to the IPCC third assessment report, it also stated that the utilization of the coast has increased dramatically during the 20th century, and this trend is virtually certain to continue throughout the 21st century. The populated deltas, especially the Asian megadeltas, the low-lying coastal urban areas and atolls are the key societal hotspots of coastal vulnerability, where the stress on natural systems coincide with low human adaptive capacity and very high exposure to these natural calamities. Are these slides visible, Shatarupa, now?
Yes, Didi, it's visible, but that in a small mode only. It's not coming in the slideshow. But you can do one thing, Didi. You can just increase the size of the slides. It might be a bit larger then.
Okay.
Okay.
Then is it coming?
Yeah. It's coming. Yeah, okay.
Some technical glitches are always
these
there.
These are inevitable. The technical glitches will be there. No problem.
Okay. So coming to the Sundarban part, see here, I'd like to focus mainly on what is the location of the Indian Sundarbans. The Indian Sundarbans is mainly located in the lower Hooghly-Matla estuary, which is bounded by the Dampier-Hodges line in the north, which is marking the northward migration of the mangroves, and it is the lineament which is extending from Harwa in North 24 Parganas block to Kagdeep in the South 24 Parganas block. In the west, it is bounded by river Hooghly, in the south by the Bay of Bengal, and in the east by river Haribhanga, Raimongol, and Ichamoti. The total area that is covered is 9,630 square kilometers, and only 40% of the total Sundarbans is contained within the Indian Sundarbans part. The forest area is around 4,264 square kilometers. The core area is comprising of 1,330 square kilometers. The reclaimed zone, where the human habitations are there, it is comprising of 5,366 square kilometers, and 19 community blocks are there which are spread within South and North 24 Parganas district. The North 24 Parganas district, 6 community development blocks are there, all contained under the Boshirhat subdivision, while the 13 community blocks are spread in 4 subdivisions of the Indian Sundarbans like Canning, Baruipur, Diamond Harbour, and Kagdeep. There are 6 blocks which are facing the Bay of Bengal, and they are the Goshaba, Kultoli, Namkhana, Shagor, Pathur Pratima, and Kagdeep. Now, is this slideshow coming?
No, Didi. No.
Still not coming.
No.
Still not coming. I'm trying hard, but still it is not coming. Okay. Now, what is the uniqueness of the Sundarban Island system? First of all, it is a unique repository of 94 mangrove species, among which 75 are woody and 23 are herbaceous. This has been designated as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in the year 1987 because of its huge repository of this mangrove species. Now, apart from this, the region is also having around 1586 species, faunal species, and these faunal species are facing a major problem at present because of the climate change scenario. So, what are the major content of this faunal species, they are the reptiles, the birds, as well as the mammals. This is a complete list of the faunal species. Now, coming to the importance of the mangroves, why we should preserve for the mangroves. Mangroves are those vegetations which we find at the land-water interface, and these are binding the roots, and they are giving us a natural protection or the barrier for natural calamities. They are binding the roots from getting eroded. They are also providing us the habitat for a large number of millions of people living there. They are also providing habitat for fish, birds, and mammals that are surviving there for a long time. And they are also acting as the trapping of the carbon, and they are also responsible for lowering the concentration of the greenhouse gases. In fact, because of all these characteristics, the Sundarbans was also designated as a biosphere reserve in the year 1989 under the MAP program, that is Man and Biosphere Program. And it has also been declared, the coastal stretches of Sundarbans have also been declared as CRZ1 by the Environment Department, Government of West Bengal in the year 1991 under the Coastal Regulation Zone Act. Now, coming to the relative sea level rise, what the Bay of Bengal different stations are facing at present, and what is the situation which the Sundarbans is facing. If we just make a comparative study, we can see that the Chennai coast, in the Chennai coast, there is relative sea level fall, that there is rising of the land. But the rate of present sea level rise at Paradip is only 1.69 millimeter per year. At Vizag, it is over 2 millimeter per year, but at Shagor Island in Indian Sundarbans, it is around 3.14 millimeter per year, which is much above the global average of 2 millimeter per year. This is really very alarming. In fact, we can see that from the map of the Sundarbans, which was prepared by the satellite data, it was found that the red portions are marking the erosional areas, and the green portions are marking the accretional zones, and the red zones are much more prominent compared to that of the accretional areas. Here from 1969 to 2001, that is around, say, around 30 years of time span, it has lost around 80.5 square kilometer area. Already some of the islands like Lohachora Bedford have completely got wiped out from the map of Sundarbans, and some of the very populated islands like Ghoramara, Shagor, Moushuni are suffering from bulk of erosion. In fact, from the analysis of the tide gauge data, it has already been mentioned that Shagor is facing a relative sea level rise of 3.14 millimeter per year, which is greater, which is much higher compared to the global average of 2 millimeter per year. Some of the islands which are facing massive land loss problems constitute the Dokhin Surendranagar in Pathar Pratima block, the Shagor, Namkhana, Moushuni again under the Shagor block, and Ghoramara, which is situated in the northwestern part of Shagor Island. It has registered around 41% land loss during this same time span of 32 years from 1969 to 2001. Now, coming to this particular part, we can see that if I'm just making trying to give you an idea that how the shape of Ghoramara is changing. Since I'm not being able to show you this slideshow, that is why I'm just removing these parts so that you can have a look how the shape of the Ghoramara is changing. So this is because of the coastal erosion which is occurring from all the sides, and how this shape has changed over the years frequently. And this is the aerial change which Ghoramara has registered around 5 square kilometer loss from 1969 to 2001. The same is happening in case of Shagor Island also. The shape of the Shagor Island is changing because of the coastal erosion problems. This has also registered around, say, 30 square kilometer loss within the same time span. So these populated islands need immediate corrective measures for arresting the coastal erosion problems. Now, coming to the photo where I have taken it in the Ishwaripur Mauza of Shagur Island, where Murigonga River is making the erosion problems very acute. These were taken in the year 2014 and it is still continuing. Here again, I have visited this place frequently and I have noticed that the shape of Bokhali area, which is a very popular tourist spot and is known by the name of Lokipur Awadh village locally, the shape of the village is changing fast and it has registered around 1.406 square kilometer land loss within 48 years from 1958 to 2006 due to coastal erosion. Now, the shape of the village has completely changed and it has now acquired the shape of a boat. So it is again, whether it will survive in the near future or not, that is a very big question for these popular tourist spots. Now, apart from the sea level rise problems, we can see that the region is also facing some biophysical changes. What are those changes? Firstly, we can notice that there is temperature rise over land and sea. There is marginal increase in rainfall, especially the total annual rainfall of in the region is increasing per year. And there has been a rise in the post-monsoon rainfall, which mainly occurs during the months of, say, October to December. There has been a rise in the frequency of the high intensity events with wind speeds more than 64 knots. There has been the salinization of estuarine water and soil, and the region is also registering a huge loss of forest cover as well as floral and faunal diversity loss. Apart from these biophysical changes, the region has also encountered an enormous population rise since independence, and it has registered around 282% rise in the population size. The spectacular rise in the population has led to wide-scale reclamation, deforestation, together with unsustainable resource exploitation practices. Now, as I have mentioned earlier, there has been a rise in the cyclones, especially with wind speeds more than 64 knots. It was earlier observed that from 1970 to 2002, there has been a fall in the frequency of storms and depressions. But the high intensity events like cyclones, they are again rising. And from 2007 to 2020, already the region has faced such cyclones as Cedar, in the year 2007, then in the year 2009, that Ayla cyclone on 25th of May 2009, and again the Amphan cyclone in the year 2020 on 20th May, almost in the same month. In the same month, only at a gap of 5 days. So over the last 2 decades, especially from 1990 to 2010, around 950 million rupees has got lost or damaged, and it mainly occurred because of crop failure and forest property loss. Around 0.4 million people got affected. Around 600 families had to migrate and settle elsewhere as environmental refugees due to the storm surges and coastal flooding. Here is the complete list of the cyclones which have visited this place from 1833 to 1988 and how the region got affected under different cyclones. This is the speed also has been mentioned under each of these cyclones. Now, these are some of the photographs. Let me remove it. These are some of the photographs of the Ayla cyclones. You can have a very clear picture of this now. So Ayla cyclone that hit in the year 2009 on May 25th affected 100,000 people in the region, and the main dikes in major islands like Shagor, Pathor Protima, Sandesh Khali 1 and 2, Hingalganj, Kultoli, Moshuni, all were affected. They were completely bridged out. The same happened in case of the cyclone Amphan also, which hit on May 20, 2020 with heavy rains and a sustained speed of 170 kilometers per hour with a gushing speed of around 190 kilometers per hour. This mangroves acted as a complete shield for dissipating some of the cyclone Amphan's energy and shielded our densely populated city like Kolkata. But millions of people in the Sundarbans got affected, mud homes were swept away, embankments were destroyed, and farms were inundated by saline water that made them unfit for cultivation for long years. If we go to this part also, these are some of the pictures of the aftermath of Cyclone Amphan. And here we can see that the entire length of 100-kilometer Nyland Fence has also got damaged, which was erected to prevent the tigers from straying into the human habitations. Almost the livelihoods of the people are getting affected because there is huge intrusion of salt water into the low-lying agricultural fields, and there is also intrusion of salt water in the freshwater fish in ponds and is affecting the fish stocks of the area. So the complete livelihood of the people has changed. Now here, I would like to suggest some of the very excellent literary works that were put forwarded by Amitabh Ghosh, the winner of the 54th Gyanpith Award and also Sahitya Akademi Award, and he just has gifted us with excellent literary works on Hungry Tide, The Great Derangement that was published in the year 2016, Hungry Tide was published in 2004, and The Gun Island published in 2019. And by reading this, we can have a we can develop a very vivid idea on how the islanders are facing the vagaries of the climate and how their lives and livelihoods are getting affected under this climate change situation. He has beautifully described all these sufferings of the people. So I'd like to suggest all those researchers who are working on these climate change issues, especially in the coastal tropical waters, to go through these literary works. And if you want to have an idea that what this eminent writer is thinking about the aftermath of the Cyclone Amphan, you can visit the YouTube link, which is given here. And if you just make a wild search in the YouTube, you can come to know what he has opined after the aftermath of Cyclone Amphan in Sundarbans. And the interview was taken by Rajdeep Sardeshai. Now, again, the Sundarbans is only having a earthen embankment protection against all these natural calamities, and it is having 3,520 kilometers long earthen embankment. But in the year 2008, from satellite data, we got that around 12% of these earthen embankment has got bridged in several parts. Now, after Aila cyclone and the Amphan cyclone, this percentage may be around 30%. And Lokhipurabad village, which is a very popular tourist spot known by the name of Bokhali, has practically no protection of embankments and is completely exposed to the sea. That is why it is losing so much of land because of coastal erosion problems. Moreover, this Hooghly, lower Hooghly Matla estuary in the recent years is also facing a major dearth of fresh water supply because Bengal basin is tilting towards the east, and there is the fresh water supply from the Hooghly River is going towards the east, and the Bangladesh is getting that water, fresh water. But in the lower Hooghly Matla estuary, all the floral and faunal species are suffering because of the dearth of the fresh water supply. Are the slides coming, Shatarupa?
Yes, Didi, they are coming.
Okay.
Not as slideshow,
Okay.
but we can see it. No problem.
Okay, okay. And the students can see?
Yeah. Everybody is seeing. No problem.
Okay, okay, no problem. Okay, now Sundarbans has also registered around 117 square kilometer loss in the forest coverage from 1969 to 2001, and this is attributed both to coastal erosion problems as well as natural degradation. And the anthropogenic interventions are also increasing a lot over this island system. In 2014, it was estimated that around 23% is under forest cover. There is steep declining of the forest cover from 1986 to 2009, as has been obtained from the satellite data. Apart from this, the sweetwater species like Heritiera forms, which is known by the name of Sundari, then the Nipa, that is Golpata, locally named as Golpata, or Xylocarpus, that is Thudhul and Pashur, are also showing a trend of migrating northwards. But because of huge human habitations there, they are not getting enough space, and they are getting threatened. And unless immediate corrective actions are taken, they may get extinct in the near future. Now, apart from the floral species, many faunal species have also got extinct from the region because of the change in the salinity regime. And these include the water buffalo, the Javan rhino, one-horned rhino, swamp deer, the barking deer, the chital deer, the hog deer, and finally, the tigers are also facing a major dearth of fresh water, and so they are frequently visiting the human habitations just because of the want of sweet water as well as because of food. Now coming to the social vulnerability problems. The region already I have mentioned that it has faced around 82% rise in the population size since independence. Currently, in the as per 2011 census, it is having 4.4 million people, which is accounting around, say, 4.85% of the total population of the state. The region as per 2011 census was having 996 persons per square kilometer, and this has registered around 11% rise from the initial 2001 figure of 897 persons per square kilometer. If the same trend of population continues, then it is estimated that by the year 2021, the island system will be having around, say, 60 lakhs of inhabitants, which will again have a growth of around 37% from the current population figure of 44 lakhs. And again, another alarming point to be noted is that the coastal blocks are facing an increased growth of population around, say, 106% compared to the inland blocks. So in spite of people getting openly vulnerable in the coastal stretches, they are trying to settle in those areas just to get hold of both the land and the marine resources. This was the population pressure point map prepared for 2001, and exactly similar situation was observed in the year 2011 also. This was prepared on the basis of the growth rate, population growth rate figures of 91 to 2001 and density of 2001, and the whole 19 community development blocks were categorized into 4 classes: zones of congestion, centers of past population growth, zones with future potentials for population growth, and zones with least potentials for population growth. Now, Shagur and Namkhana, which are situated at the extreme western portion of Sundarbans, they are having the problems of future potentials for population growth, but they are very, very vulnerable in terms of these natural calamities. So in spite of, as I have said, in spite of the problem of these natural calamities, the people are just ignorant about settling in the inland blocks, and they are trying to settle in these coastal stretches. This is the same, the condition has been observed in case of the 2011 census also, and in that 2011 census data also, when we tried to form a map, then Shagur and Namkhana were again falling under the zones with future potentials for population growth. Now this map, the risk zone map of Sundarbans, was prepared on the basis of the sea level rise data, the storm surge and coastal flooding data, and it was found that the reserve forest areas of Sundarbans were falling under the very high risk zone, where inundation may happen if the surge height is less than 2 meters, but it is mainly constituting the Goshaba, Kultoli and few blocks of Pathur Protima, which are not very densely populated. Hence, we are not very concerned with this. But the high risk zones where inundation with surge height may happen if it ranges from 2 to 2.5 meters, these are alarming areas, and this mainly constitutes the riverside portions of the populated or densely populated islands, and the medium risk zone again constitutes the inland portions of the region which are thickly populated. Now, the very popular tourist spots like Bokhali in Namkhana or Gangashagar in Shagur block, they all fall under high risk zone, which may get inundated with surge height ranging from 2 to 2.5 meters. Coming to the occupational structure of the people, it has been found that 95% of the total population is depending on agriculture, and 54% of the families are the landless agricultural laborers there. And their earning are very meager, and these agriculturist groups can be subdivided into marginal or small farmers with a very meager income of around 220 rupees per month per family. And the average monthly expenditure was also higher, and they were just going for the loans. The medium farmers, their earning are also meager. The large farmers, their income is also less than 1,000 rupees per month. The landless laborers are the most vulnerable group, and others earning are also around say 350 rupees per family per month. This was the observation, this was the result which came out around say a primary survey that was conducted around 2010. In 2010. Again, the census data has also shown that the proportion of the cultivators in the area is sharply declining, while the percentage share of the agricultural laborers is rising in the region in different census years. Now, this may be due to loss in cultivable land by the coastal erosion, and the rise in the proportion of the agricultural laborers whose earnings are very, very low. This is adding to the poverty level, resulting in more social vulnerability problems. Coming to the food security problems, let us show these two maps. In the year 1992-93, around say the maximum portion of Sundarban blocks was under two crop, that is almond paddy and wheat were grown side by side. But in the year 1999-2000, almost the whole area has got converted into a monocrop zone, where the almond paddy was the only crop, and the dependence on the almond paddy is growing very, very high, which is completely monsoon dependent. Now, when we tried to regress this almond paddy productivity with the rainfall, we have observed that it is showing a negative relation. As the total rainfall is increasing, the productivity of the almond paddy is declining. The same is happening in case of the post-monsoon rainfall, which I mentioned, which we took the months to be October, November and December. And again, when we tried to regress the same with the November rainfall also, the same trend we could see. So why November has been taken? Because the crop is harvested during the month of November. That is why we tried to regress this productivity of almond paddy with the November month. Now, apart from this, in the agricultural sector, the per capita availability of land is also declining fast because of the problem of coastal erosion, and there is a major problem of saline water intrusion. That is why there has been a fast conversion of agricultural lands to the aquaculture farms, which the farmers are finding to be more profitable. So this dependence on almond paddy has to be reduced, and more crop diversification has to be introduced into the region. Now, coming to the fishing sector, It has also been noticed that from 1984-85 to 2002-03, there has been a sharp decline in the catch par unit effort in this lower Hooghly-Matlai estuary part. In fact, this is due to the overfishing in the region. Moreover, under the climate change scenario, it is further anticipated that the plankton production may get adversely affected, which may further lead to declining of the fish stock, endangering the livelihood and sustenance of the ecological community of Sundarbans. Apart from it, we have also tried to find out what was the yield from the winter months, especially from November to January, when the fishing is done at a very large rate. And it has been found that it is exceeding the maximum sustainable yield figures under all the different models which we calculated under Skifer, Fox, and relative response models. And this is also alarming for the fishermen of the region. Now, coming to the tourism occupation, where we visited the Bokhali coast. Frequently, I visit this area, Bokhali and Gangasagar. These are frequently visited by me in the year 2014, 2020, and again 2020 March. I visited this place with my students, and in the previous years also, 2006, 2010, we found that many hotels and resorts are coming within this 500 meters line from the high tide. Though this coastal stretch has been declared as the CRZ1 by the Coastal Regulation Zone Act of 1991, but these resorts are completely ignoring the guidelines of the CRZ rule. So this cannot be done, and huge environmental degradation is happening in these spots. Again, the environmental pollution problems from the hotels is also rising. There is huge dumping of wastes from these hotels to the open sea, and they are either burning those wastes or they are dumping it into the sea. When they are burning those wastes in their backyard, then a potential amount of methane is getting generated, which is again degrading the local environment to a large extent. Apart from this, the region is also facing a major transformation in terms of the agricultural and aquaculture firms. There has been a complete shift of the agricultural firms to aquaculture in some northern community development blocks in North 24 Parganas, especially Mina Khan, Dhamakhali area of Sandesh Khali 2 block. There we cannot find a single piece of agricultural land. Almost all have got converted either to bricklines or to aquaculture firms. This is just because of the saline water intrusion. That is a natural one, and also the farmers are not finding it very remunerative to stay in this agricultural business, and they are fast converting their agricultural lands to the aquaculture farms. In fact, this tendency is more noticed in case of the coastal blocks compared to the inland blocks. And some of the blocks which are facing this major transformation is listed here. This constitute the Namkhana, then Dokhin Gopalnagar and other islands in Pathor Pratima block, Bonoshyam Nagar, that is also in Pathor Pratima block, Dokhin Surendranagar, Rakhalpur, Jharkhali Island, Arampur, Chota Mollakhali and Mitrobari. These are some of the islands in the Goshaba block also. Now, there has been some natural changes which is attributed to different causes. So mud flats increases there in the island area because of accretion. Somewhere the mud flats are also decreasing because of submergence due to sea level rise. The mud flats are getting converted to sand flats because of the flow regime shift due to relative sea level rise. The sand flats are getting converted to mud flats because of progradation. The mud flats getting converted to mangroves because of colonization in swamp. The beaches are increasing because of accretion. Beaches are decreasing again at different spots and that is more pronounced because of erosion problems. Sand dunes are increasing because of accretion. Sand dunes are also decreasing because of erosion. Salt pans are increasing because of salinization. Mangroves are increasing due to colonization. Mangroves are decreasing due to environmental degradation as well as anthropogenic intervention. Earthen embankments are decreasing because of erosion and submergence due to sea level rise, and total area available within the CRZ is also decreasing due to coastal erosion problems. Apart from natural changes, some anthropogenic changes are also occurring rapidly in the island system, and this constitute the transformation of the mangrove to agricultural land. Why it is so? Because of the reclamation process that is going on in increased manner because of the population demand. Apart from this, because of huge population demand, the agricultural lands are getting converted to aquaculture, the mud flats are getting converted to aquaculture, the salt pans are getting converted to aquaculture, the mangroves are again getting converted to aquaculture farms. The agricultural land are again getting converted to brick lanes. Just now I have mentioned about the Dhamakhali area of Sondeshkhali 2 block. It is very near to Kolkata metropolis, where we can see that I just visited the area in the year 2019 October, and I found around 15 to 16 brick lanes have come up within 1 square kilometer area at the expense of agricultural lands. This is mainly due to the urbanization process. The mud flats are also getting converted to brick lanes because of urbanization. The agricultural lands are getting converted to households or settlements because of population growth. Mud flats are getting converted to ponds because of reclamation and population demand, and mangroves are also decreasing because of deforestation. So what nature adaptive changes have been observed? The creek banks, they are getting converted to embankments, which may be taken as a natural hazard mitigation. The dunes are also getting converted into cyclone shelter, which is a natural hazard mitigation. The creek banks on mud flats or sand flats are also getting converted to mangrove forests because of plantations which are being done by the forest department to prevent the erosions. Now coming to the poverty status in Sundarbans, in the year 2004-05, it was observed that around 44% of the families in Sundarbans were living under the poverty line. At the time, it was defined as 273 rupees per capita per month. And majority of the households, especially in the blocks of Sondeshkhali 1, Sondeshkhali 2 block, Pathor Pratima block, Namkhana block, they were below the poverty line. So it was much higher than the average figure for West Bengal at the time of 24.7 and all India average figure of 27.5. Similar observation was also made for 2014, but that was based on primary observation because this block-wise data was not available in the recent years, and I'm trying earnestly to collect this block-wise data, but I'm not getting systematic data, and I'm in the process of updating this. But my primary observations has revealed that the landless agricultural laborers with average per capita per month income of rupees 300 to 400 constitute the most vulnerable group in the inland locales, and in the coastal locations. Still today, the mean seed collectors having the per capita income of 300 to 500, they are the most vulnerable group. However, the aquaculturists are in a much better position whose earning range from around say 15,000 to 16,000 per month because they are mostly engaged in export business now. Now coming to the HDI. The HDI also I started to have this data collection from the this Human Development Report of 2009, and it was found that for the South 24 Pargana blocks, the southern blocks facing the sea, they are better performers in terms of the HDI value compared to the North 24 Pargana blocks. Why is it so? Because of their better education index. The standard of living index was calculated taking into account the food security of the people, the clothing, the housing, the livelihood, and the ownership of the consumer durables, and hence it is a modified HDI framework that was calculated for the Sundarban blocks. The overall Human Development Index was found to be around, say, 0.55, and this is much lower compared to the state average figure of 0.61. In fact, this indicates that the people's well-being in Sundarbans is much lagging behind compared to the other parts of the state. So overall, taking all this into account, we can see that the climate change has a direct linkage with the social inequality problems in the region and also for lowering the coping capacity of the people. In fact, it is increasing the exposure of the people to climate hazards. It is increasing the susceptibility to damage caused by these climate hazards, and it is also decreasing the coping ability of the people and to recover from this damage. In fact, these climate hazards are inviting the multidimensional inequality and the greater exposures as well as vulnerability of the disadvantaged groups to these climate hazards. This is perpetuating the vicious cycle, and this is making the inequality side worse. So what are the major problems in a nutshell? First of all, the large-scale destruction and deforestation, which is going on regarding the mangrove forest because of the human habitations, because of huge population demand. Secondly, the management problems, that is the protection versus the loss of biodiversity, which is very acute. The siltation on the river bed is alarming, causing frequent flood and overflow of the rivers and frequent saline water intrusion, especially in the time of high intensity events. The problem of food security is gradually cropping up. The transportation facilities are still not developed in several parts of the region, especially in Goshaba block, Kultoli block, Bashunti block area. There has been an uncontrolled population growth which is still continuing, and the marginal status of the people is very low. The agriculture is still not developed and is facing the major crisis of crop diversification. Very little scope of any secondary activities is there to develop in Sundarbans due to inadequacy of power supply as well as market facilities. Now coming to the anticipated future changes, what the region is going to face in the future. Obviously, there will be major loss of land in terms of habitation, agriculture, aquaculture, tourism, everywhere. And it is estimated that by 2020, which we already have crossed, around say 913 square kilometer area loss will be there from the 13 most vulnerable blocks, which constitute both the populated islands as well as the reserve forest area, and this constitutes around 11% of the total area of 13 most vulnerable islands. There will be huge displacement of the people. There will be huge capital loss, which involves both damages to property, means of production and crops. There will be, again, loss of forest area, loss of species diversity, and the quality of human life will further lowered down, will be much below the desired one. Now, the people already affected, which was calculated from the risk zone map of Sundarbans, was found to be around 13 lakhs. The people at risk stands to be around 2 million, again, who are residing in the medium risk zone map, which I just showed you. The projected number of environmentally displaced persons is estimated to be around 69,000. The capital value loss is estimated to be rupees 6,000 million by 2020. The total annual adaptation cost, which includes the investment for protective embankments, expenditure for rehabilitation, as well as for enhancing the adaptation capabilities of the people, stands to be around rupees 1292 million. These are all estimated at the 2010 market prices. And for fitting all these figures into a common methodology framework that was proposed by the IPCC, the GDP, other than GDP, the DDP at this level was considered, that is the district domestic product, because we were working with the village level, and so the DDP was used as the proxy variable to fit within that common methodology framework, and which worked out to be around 206314 million. So it was huge. And when we tried to fit all this data into this common methodology framework, where we tried to quantify the level of vulnerability in the island system, we found that the composite vulnerability index was coming to be around 0.176, which is falling under the high vulnerability class. Now, it was calculated in the year 2008, and we are in the process of updating it. Now, after the 2009 Ayla cyclone and 2020 Amphan cyclone, this might have reached the critical level. So we need to update this, and why I have used this term modified common methodology approach, because in that original common methodology framework, these two categories of forest area loss and human deprivation status were not included. But we tried to incorporate these two very important factors which have a major impact on the island system. That is why the common methodology approach was modified to some extent for the Sundarban case. Now, under this scenario, what we need is to plan for effective measures to restore some of the damages from this island system. And what are the feasible management strategies we can plan? First of all, to design an appropriate rehabilitation program by maintaining a systematic record of the environmental refugees who are moving from one island to another frequently in Sundarbans. We have to design appropriate buffer and setback zones between the settlement area and the coast, and mangrove needs to be implemented in densely populated coastal blocks like Shagor and Namkhana. The natural land reclamation process, that is mangrove plantation, construction of siltation ponds and ring dams, should be encouraged. To protect the earthen embankments, we should opt for bioengineering techniques, two-line mangrove plantation and application of geojutes, which are very nature-friendly. And rehabilitation programs should be devised by formulating the policies for insurance, rehabilitation and compensation with the help of the state and the central government bodies and international agencies. Finally, I would like to conclude by stating that for all these adaptation strategies to get implemented in the fragile environment of Sundarbans, this needs the assurance of huge technical assistance and hence huge fund from both within and outside the nation. Moreover, to utilize these modern techniques, the existing transport network and power supply has to be improved in the region, and the decentralization and coordination are also required in the planning process to ensure the sustainable development of the fragile ecosystems of Sundarbans in the near future. I extend my sincere thanks to all these renowned personalities for helping me and guiding me in every step to make this in-depth study over the island system from time to time. I thank you all for the patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for such an elaborative and outstanding presentation. Now the session is open for discussion. I have picked up some relevant questions. May I ask, ma'am?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, one of our participants, Shubroto Dasgupta, want to know that what are the footprints of Amphan in Sundarban ecosystem?
See, I have already discussed it in my presentation that huge number of millions of people got affected because of this Amphan, and the mud houses got totally damaged. There was complete breaching of the defense line that was protecting us from the tigers in the human habitation. So the tigers are invading the area at a much greater pace, and there is complete intrusion. There is a huge intrusion of saline water in the agricultural fields. So they are becoming unfit for cultivation for the next 5 years. Moreover, the freshwater ponds, there the fish stocks are getting affected because of this saline water intrusion. So the lives and livelihoods of the people have already got huge damage they are facing because of this Amphan cyclone. And though they are trying to migrate into the nearby cities of Kolkata, but under the pandemic situation, they are not getting the proper means to stay here, and they are again rendered into some miserable conditions.
Okay, next question is why this area faces so much land loss in comparison to other coastal areas?
Because of the relative sea level rise. Here it is facing the relative sea level rise at 3.14 millimeter per year, which is much greater than the global average of 2 millimeter per year. And the land is subsiding here. So here the coastal erosion problems is much greater, and moreover the protection which is only available to protect this coastal stretches is the earthen embankment, which is getting bridged away from time to time because of the high intensity events like cyclones. So there is no such protective barrier to protect these islands from these coastal inundation and flooding. This is the reason. And also for the land loss.
And the third one is the impact of sea level rise somehow increasing with the continuous land reclamation in Sundarban?
Yeah, obviously. And because of the anthropogenic interventions and because of the population demands, the unsustainable resource exploitation practices are going on. And without having a proper scientific knowledge, the land conversions are going on from agriculture to aquaculture, from mudflats to aquaculture, from mangroves to aquaculture. And this is threatening the food security problems in the region. It is gradually growing up.
And the fourth one is, after Amphan, what strategies should be taken towards sustenance of community and ecosystem?
I have already discussed this. First of all, we need to devise rehabilitation policies regarding insurance policies for these people, and we should take a systematic record of the environmental refugees who are forced to migrate from one island to another for these cyclonic events. We have to keep a record of these people, and we need to find out some secured shelters for these people who can be rehabilitated during the times of emergencies.
And the last one is, how can we get back the lost Sundari trees and other well-known species?
See, this research is going on. So it is really a big question that how we can restore the damage which has been caused to this freshwater species only if we can reduce the demand of our anthropogenic intervention, and if we can reduce the density of human habitations, and if we give this freshwater species a space to migrate somewhat towards the north to get the supply of fresh water to some extent, then the damage can be met to some extent. But this research is going on, and I'm really not in a position to answer this right now. So it needs a thorough research.
Thank you, ma'am, for clearing all our doubts. Now I would like to request
Chondrima,
Yes.
please ask the participants if anybody have any other question or not. Just just ask.
Okay, the session is open for discussion. If anybody has any question, may ask.
Okay, ma'am, I want to ask one.
Yeah,
question.
sure, ma'am. Sure.
How are the mangrove areas of the same kind outside India coping this threat of sea level rise from the development point of view? How are they making their developments? I would like to know.
See, the uncontrolled population growth is not like us, and the population demand is somewhat less compared to us. So there is not the major conversions of the mangroves to other land areas like say aquaculture or agriculture or human habitations, and the management strategies are also taken in a very scientific way, and they are being done in a proper scientific manner along with the stakeholders participation. But here in India we are not uh, taking the suggestions or the advice from the stakeholders who are living there, and we need to have some participatory management system. We need to include them also in our decision making, which we seldom do. So in the other areas where the participation of the local people is much more, who has lot more experience to stay there for a long time and to combat these diseases, their decision we must take with major importance, and we should include what they are saying, and this is what lacking in our areas.
Okay,
It is
thank you a lot.
according to my perception only. This is according to my perception. Since I visited those areas and I have frequently communicated with those people, but they are saying that no, they are not being consulted in the times of emergency, and all the decisions are being taken at the government front, and they are hardly included for any decision making. This is the grievance which they have shown to us.
Thank you.
Ma'am, Shubrata Dashgupta is once again asking that do you think that there will be food shortage in these areas for erosion of agricultural areas?
Yeah, it is going to happen. No, there is no doubt about it. Though the people are still having 3 times diet in Sundarbans, and their diets are mainly comprised of the paddy along with the fish, and they're mostly having the non-veg diet still now. But as the saline water intrusion is happening over both the agricultural lands and the sweetwater ponds, obviously the fish stocks are going to reduce in future, and the dependence on the monocrop, if it is not reduced again, and if the crop diversification is not introduced, obviously the region is going to face the food security insecurity problems.
HOD madam, can I stop this discussion session, or
Yeah, if there is no other question, we can now end the discussion part.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah, there is a question, I think.
Yeah.
Srijita, yes.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah,
Ma'am, my question is, in your presentation, you mentioned about the beaches decreasing as well as they are increasing in some of the areas.
yeah.
Now, in the beaches of South Bengal, there are infrastructural development like coastal parks are being developed, and beaches are being bounded by big boulders. Now, ma'am, now the development are indicators of the area that is being developed. Now, how can we fit both the parameters in one frame, like as well as the infrastructure is also required for the development, but it is also having an impact on the sea level and the coast? So how can we fit both the indicators in one frame?
See, this is really a very problematic situation, and what I observed from my frequent primary surveys that were conducted in Namkhana and in the Gangasagar areas, though there is some initiatives taken by the local government to give boulders for as protection, but these are not meant for the long term, and these boulders are also getting removed from time to time because of the huge coastal flooding and inundation problems. So we have to find out some solutions which may long in a long term way, means which can be there, which can be sustained for a longer time there. So these are only temporary solutions that the government is giving, and hence the coastal erosion problem is still continuing, and the flood and inundation problem is still continuing. Though the government is trying to make some viable solutions to this, but since they are not consulting the local people and the participatory management is still lacking there, so there lies the problem. The problem still persists.
Ma'am, one more question. Ma'am, a US-based research group is predicting that by 2050, due to sea level rise, most of the coastal Indian cities will be underwater. So Sundarban will be at high risk. So as a geographers, how can we imagine, or how can we draw the picture of Sundarban in 2050? Like আমরা কি বলতে পারি কি সুন্দরবন আজ থেকে এত বছর পর কোথায় স্ট্যান্ড করবে?
2050 তে আশা করছি আমিও থাকবো, তুমিও থাকবে। সুতরাং দেখা যাক সেটা আমরা কতদূর এই সুন্দরবনকে দেখতে পাই বা বুঝতে পারি। আমাদের তো অনেক রকম প্রেডিকশনস আছে, বাট স্টিল আমরা দেখছি এটা কতখানি আমাদের অলরেডি we are taking enough of mitigation measures to restore the damage. Let us see, let us hope for the best, যাতে এই ম্যানগ্রোভস গুলো বাঁচে এবং আমরাও যাতে তাদের সাথে বাঁচতে পারি। কারণ in absence of these mangroves, we are also not going to survive, and we cannot resist these natural calamities to attack us and damage us. তো আশা করছি 2050 তুমিও দেখতে পাবে, আমিও দেখতে পাবো। Let us see what happens.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Wow, it is a very good discussion session, interactive one. I have an announcement for the participants that the Google Meet link for the certificate, I will be sharing the Google Meet link during the valedictory speech, and you have to submit that link, that form, Google form, after the completion of this lecture. Okay, no mail will be sent to you separately. Okay, now I would like to request Dr. Shatarupa Denugi, Head of the Department of Geography, to give the valedictory speech and conclude the session.
Thank you, Chondrima. I think I am audible.
Yes.
At the very beginning, I would like to thank our most honorable principal, ma'am, for giving us the permission and extending our help in all possible ways to make this lecture happen. And it was in a very short notice. So I thank ma'am for that. And I regret that I have a very croaky voice today due to my severe laryngitis. So I beg pardon for that also. Next, I would like to extend my gratitude and my heartfelt thanks to the esteemed speaker, Dr. Rajushri Dasgupta. She's not only my senior, but my elder sister, and I have heard her speak on Sundarban previously. Also, I know she has done an in-depth study over Sundarban, and I knew that the audience will be very much satisfied, and they will learn something from the lecture. And the chat box says it all. I don't have to say anything. The chat box says it all, that the students are so much happy to hear to the detailed, engrossing, interactive, informative. Adjectives will fall short to describe the lecture, but again I extend my gratitude and thanks to Dr. Rajushri Dasgupta ma'am for taking out time out of her busy schedule. She is also the HOD. I know how much stress and strain we have to take, but then I thank her again. And next, I would like to thank the participants. This is a beautiful juxtaposition of faculties, research scholars, students. After this pandemic situation of Sarojini Naidu College Department of Geography, I feel happy that I could, with the help of my department, organize this one. Though it's late, but better late than never. So I thank the participants for being with us, cooperating with us, sharing their thoughts and opinions with us. Discussion part was really nice. So I thank them all. Next, I would like to extend my gratitude and my sincere thanks to all the faculty members of my department for being with me in this endeavor and always supporting and cooperating with me and believing in me. Thank you. Thanks a lot to all the faculties. I would like to extend my thank to Chondrima and Madhusridi for helping me out with the anchoring and coordination part today. I would like to thank Shayon and Tomagno for their technical assistance. And last but not the least, I would like to thank my students. Our main focus today was not the faculties, not the research scholars, primarily our focus was our students, because Sundarban is a very much relevant topic, and it has been incorporated in our CBCS system. And often I have seen that in webinars and seminars, the students are somehow left out. We focus so much on faculties and we focus so much on research scholars. The students who are the base, who will in future be the research scholars and faculties, they are somehow left out. So our primary focus was to bring in their perspective, their thinking, their involvement in the webinar, and I think we are successful in that. So thank you, my students, and all other students who have joined, not only here but also in the YouTube. Thanks a lot. I once again thank our esteemed speaker for being with us, for sharing her thoughts, in-depth research, and I hope that this collaboration will be again in the future. We will get you whenever we we need you. And this collaboration
Sure.
this
I
collaboration
will also be very delighted to join you all.
thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I'm
I
happy
also
that you are
enjoyed.
happy.
I also
and,
enjoyed this session.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Thank
much.
you.
And with this, I would like to once more say that the feedback form will be posted by Chondrima in the chat box. Please fill it up so that we can prepare your certificates, and we will be sending it to you by within 1 month. And with this, I declare the formal closure of this session. Thank you, Rajashree. Thank you all
Thank
the
you.
participants, my faculties. Thank you all.